Hi, this is Bill Hartzer, and this is the Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast for Thursday, March 10th, 2022. A couple of things to talk about this week. So one thing that, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but honestly, it's worth mentioning again. So this is the Google Advanced Protection Key. And I don't know if you've heard of Google Advanced Protection. It has not really been publicized too much. But if you have a Google account, I highly suggest that you go ahead and get sign up for the Google Advanced Protection service. So here's one of the keys, this is the Titan Security Key. This is the USB version. I'm gonna open it up, show you what it looks like. And this is this is the key. Basically, it's it also has an NFC chip, so you can access so basically your Google account by your phone, but it also has the larger USB, not the USB-C. And basically, you buy the key, they send it to you. Here's the other version of the key. This is this is also has an NFC chip, but also is the USB, I believe the USB-C version. So essentially, the idea here is that you cannot log into your Google account unless you have this physical key. So somebody in another country obviously wants to hack in your account, but they get into the account. You need the physical key. This is the highest level of security that you can get on a Google account. And you can also use it actually with authenticator apps as well. For example, like the Authy, AUTHY authenticator app as well. So what I suggest is that I do recommend and highly recommend again, that if you have an account, a Google account, and you do anything, that you don't want anybody else to see or get access to. So for example, if you do Google AdWords and you have to, obviously there's money involved, there's and so forth, you've got to get those Google accounts secured. I can tell you though that it's not just the physical key that is implemented. The Google Advanced Protection also gives you another level of security. There are certain apps or certain logins, if you have tied to your Google account, that in particular, for example, I have a Canon digital SLR camera that automatically, when I take a picture, I can upload those photos from the camera itself over Wi-Fi to the Google account. Well, it turns out that that connection and that whole service and everything is not secure enough to Google standards. So you cannot connect an account that's locked down with Google Advanced Protection. You cannot connect that particular service to the Google account. So I had to create actually a separate Google account for that I use for photos. And those are photos basically that I would share on social media anyway. So I'm not really too concerned about, I don't want somebody in the account. However, like I said, they're primarily just photos in there in that particular account. So anyway, that's Google Advanced Protection. It's worth it. The keys themselves for these two different versions of the keys, shipping in the US and everything was about $70, 70 or so dollars, well under $100, very worth it. So top digital marketing news this week. Want to go over a few things. So Namecheap.com, and yes, some people listening do have their domain names registered with Namecheap, and they do maybe have some hosting with them. So Namecheap is actually decided to ask all the Russian related accounts to move their domain names to another registrar. They are essentially also shutting off the hosting services. And they don't, since some of their developers or some of their accounts have actually that have actually been, they have ties, deep ties to Ukraine. Namecheap has decided to move their domain name, ask all their customers with Russian-related domain names to not be a customer of theirs anymore. I know that the Epic domain registrar is still allowing Russian accounts. So you may, if you have an account area affected, you may be able to move to Epic. Sedo.com, sedo.com, which is basically the aftermarket place and for domain names and place where they do a lot of domain parking, have a domain parking service. They have suspended domain parking and for .ru and .by domain names, and they are unable to serve customers in Russia and Belarus due to payment processing issues. So again, like I said, Sedo today, as of today, and not dealing with .ru or .by domain names. Worth it mentioning that there's a lot of other companies, and there's a lot of lists of other companies that are pulling out of Russia and so forth, and having are affected. You may want to look up those. So DuckDuckGo is rolling out search updates that are actually downranking websites associated with Russian disinformation. So if you have if you have a website that is spreading Russian disinformation, and how then DuckDuckGo is purposely downranking their website, your website. On the other hand, Google for the past 2 weeks have in their search results for keyword search, for example, for keyword Ukraine, is actually showing top results from Google News, and then they also are showing people also ask results. What is interesting is that if you do a search which on desktop for the keyword Ukraine, you actually see on the right-hand side, you're going to see the Google Knowledge Panel, or the Knowledge Panel and information about Ukraine. You're going to see the top news results, and from Google News, and then you're going to see right under that, people also ask. And those are typical questions that people also are asking Google or asking. And if you're a website that has a good answer to that question, you can actually show up in that people also ask results. People also ask is actually a really good source of traffic, especially for certain keywords. And like I said, if you do a search for a keyword and there else is a people also ask result in there in the organic results, it definitely is worth it still at this point to optimize for those questions. And literally, I can tell you that you need a page that answers that question, and you need to be the best, have the best answer. Usually, that is by creating a page for that question. It has to be, and I would say, the question has to be basically the same question that the people also ask, worded the same way, using in the title tag, the H1 tag, and so forth, and meta description tag if you can. And then also, what I recommend is giving a very good response to that question. The more in depth you can answer, and if you can include perhaps some images and perhaps other information that really addresses that particular question, and you have a lot of good well-formatted page. If you have a bulleted list, use the line item, use the HTML markup code for your bulleted list, and so forth. Use use bold italics if you need to use H2s, H3, H4 tags, and so forth. make sure you're the best answer, best, the best answer, and you have the best answer fairly quickly. If that page is already indexed and you go back and add to that page, you get it recrawled and so forth. Fairly quickly you can knock out, that number one. You can be the number one answer. And that is, that's good, still a good source of traffic, because people, especially, there's a lot of searches for Ukraine right now. And imagine, the traffic, if you could get that, if you answer that question, or any of those questions that people also ask, that you could get some good traffic. Okay, moving on. So also I can mention, if you need some help optimizing, or actually, looking at trying to get those people also asked, let me know. Feel free to get in touch. Worth mentioning this week, Sitebulb has offering a new service solution. So Sitebulb, I use Sitebulb almost daily on technical audits and for other reasons. It's an application that runs on your laptop, and it crawls websites and finds all sorts of information. And then they give you really good list of hints that are issues that they have found on the site. Those are worth reviewing, definitely. So Sitebulb is actually, rather than having to run that on personally right on your laptop, for example, that some people have actually created a separate instance on AWS or something like, something similar, and so letting people log into that on their team. Sitebulb is actually offering a new service solution for that, in the situations where there's an agency, for example, that has several people on staff that need to use Sitebulb, that they can go on the server and log in and also share all that data, and run multiple crawls and so forth. That's worth it looking into. Sitebulb is a good solution. Like I said, one of the crawlers that I use regularly. Sitebulb.com, and it's definitely worth it. So OnCrawl is, I am a brand ambassador for OnCrawl. OnCrawl is a crawler that also is similar to Sitebulb, that basically it will crawl the site. But what's unique about OnCrawl is that you can include log file data, Google Search Console data, Adobe Analytics data, Google Analytics data, and anything that you can put in a CSV. For example, if you were to have offline sales data, for example, and sales reports and so forth, if you had another system that can export CSV data, you can export ranking reports from SEMrush, for example. You can, links, anything that you can put into a CSV, you can actually import into OnCrawl and so forth. So OnCrawl is a crawler that I use regularly also. It's very good for large websites that are over 1 million pages. So OnCrawl was basically recently acquired by BrightEdge, and I understand that OnCrawl is going to continue to be a separate company and operate as if it's a separate company, and so forth, and continue to do good work there, even though their parent company now is BrightEdge. So I have a few minutes left. So I wanted to go into 301 redirects and some of the issues that I'm seeing when I'm doing technical SEO audits, for example, of websites. So what I recommend is let's look at the basics. So if you have a website and you use and you have a crawler, let's say Screaming Frog SEO crawler, or Screaming Frog SEO Spider, Sitebulb, OnCrawl, any of these, Deep Crawl, any of these crawlers, when you run a crawler and it goes from one page to the next based on links, and then it comes back and says, okay, here's all the information we gathered. You should not be seeing any 301 redirects or any redirects or 404 errors. So what I can recommend is that basically one of the biggest issues that I see right now, and even sites with really good technical SEOs working on them, is that they will change the site structure. Okay, they will change, which means that maybe they have a certain pages on the site, and they will end up combining pages, for example, or removing a page. Maybe they had two pages on the same subject, so they decided to remove one and redirect it to the other. The redirect is okay when you remove a page. However, when it comes down to it, when a visitor is on a site and you click a link, or when you mouse over a link, that URL of what you're going to click on shows up in the browser, usually in the bottom of your browser window. When you go to click that link, it should go to the final destination. It should not go to a URL that then is redirected to another page. Okay, even though that, for example, that's when you remove a page on your site, you need to fix the links to that page so that it goes to the final destination and not to a page that redirects then goes to something else. That's for both your internally on your site for another page on your site, but if you're linking out to another website, you want to make sure that when they click the link and they go to that other website, that it doesn't redirect to another site. Okay, so it comes down to regular site maintenance. But what happens is since, for example, you've removed a page on your site, or you combine two pages, if you're still linking to the page that redirects and so forth, you're actually losing essentially some, potentially some link credit, or some, you're losing something. And you should be linking directly to the final destination URL that they're going to get to when they click that link. That is, internally on your website, and that's a site maintenance issue. There's other times where you need to use 301 redirects because, for example, we have maybe combined websites, or we're moving to another domain name. Okay, so let's take, for example, the case where we're moving to a new domain name. There's a couple ways to do this, and but what I recommend is, let's say we have two domain names here, and we have the old one and the new one. The first thing you're going to want to do is number one is create at least a page. I recommend, if you can create more content, you can take some of the content from the old domain name and put it on the new domain name. Okay, maybe make another version of the homepage. The whole point of doing that is to start the process, and it is a process, to start that process of crawling and indexing. Okay, so what we want to make sure is we actually are going to get a web page on there, make sure it's HTTPS, get everything set up, verify the site in Google Search Console, verify the site in Bing Webmaster Tools. Two reasons. We want to start that crawling process. Number two is, which is actually more important here, is we want to make sure that particular new domain name, the new one we're moving to, doesn't have any issues. You're going to find pretty quickly, in give it a day or two, you're going to find whether or not there are penalties on that domain name, or whether or not, for example, Bing is even indexing that website. They may not be indexing it right now. You want to start that whole process of getting them to understand the topic of the site. You want to get them to start crawling. Then when you do move, they're already starting to crawl daily, every few days or whatever they're already starting to crawl. Then when you do move, it's going to make everything go faster. Number two is, and probably, also important is that we don't want to do too many things at once. There are couple different tasks, okay, here when we are moving from one domain name and using redirects. Number one is that we don't want to make any changes internally as far as the site structure goes on the site at the same time that we're moving the domain name, okay? So basically what we want to do is those are two different things that need to happen at two different times. Number one, what I recommend is if you're going to make major changes, move web design, new site structure, remove pages, you're going to add pages, change stuff around on the site, do that first on your site, okay? And even if that means just change on the old domain name, you might change the logo, it might have to change the logo. And however, just make that change of the logo. Still use that old domain name while you let the search engines figure out those redirects, figure out the changes that you've made to that on that particular old domain name. That might take several weeks. Ideal situation, it might take 6 weeks, a couple months. Let it all get worked out, and make those changes there. Don't combine that with moving to the new domain name and making changes, because that just confuses the whole situation. So what you want to do is make those internal site structure changes, change the web design, change whatever you're going to change on the site itself first on the old domain name. Then when everything is settled down, everything looks good, and you haven't had any rankings changes or changes in traffic significantly, then all you're going to do is do the 301 redirects for the domain name itself, okay? The domain name change is a separate task than changing internally and doing redirects internally on your site. Finally, let's say we have a situation where you have several domain names, or you buy an expired domain name. You want to upgrade to another domain name. You want to change. You're not going to change the content on the site. You're just going to change the domain name. Well, or you're just going to take a domain name and redirect it. In that case, let's take a perfect example with the client of mine that I've worked with for a while, and it turns out that they were selling, let's say, selling widgets.com, widgets, and they had widgets.com. That was their main corporate site. They've had that site and so forth for a while. They've also had for years, started 10 years ago, that they had redwidgets.com, they had bluewidgets.com, they had widgetservices.com and so forth. They had all these other websites. Those were well established over years and so forth. They're doing fairly well. But what they decided to do is take those, like for example, redwidgets.com, and move it over, get rid of the domain name, get rid of the website, and move it to their main website. That's a good strategy, because what we want to do is we don't want to kind of spread out everything. Like, for example, we want to basically make sure we have all of our links, all of our everything pointing to our main site, because that's going to build up the most authority, the best history, and be the most powerful situation, versus having a main site and then having separate websites. So in the case of this widgets.com, what we'd want to do is we have redwidgets.com. We want to actually 301 redirect that homepage, but also the interior pages to the appropriate pages to widgets.com/red, okay, for redwidgets.com. And if there's interior pages, then those interior pages would sit underneath widgets.com/red/whatever. And that rather than, and so redwidgets.com/whatever would then redirect it to the page, appropriate page. What we don't want to do, honestly, it's going to be a disaster. If you were to take redwidgets.com and redirect out to the homepage of widgets.com and just, and do it that way, because basically, when you redirect one domain name, whether it's that domain name in this situation, or whether it's a situation where you have the expired domain name, you don't want to redirect it to the homepage of your site, because the fact that it's seen as a SOC 404 error, you probably won't get the most effect. Most likely, the search engines won't count the links. They won't, even though you'll get the traffic, because of the 301 redirects and it's redirected, you want to always redirect it to an internal page. And that's, there's only kind of a few rare situations where you would redirect it to the homepage. Like I said, there's only, some of those reasons, if you have a domain name that's just never, ever, you have it and it's never been used ever, okay, you may want to redirect it to the homepage. However, consider, if it is something that, like, for example, if it's a misspelling, typo, domain, there's maybe a common misspelling of your company name, you will, at that point, you'll want to probably redirect it to your homepage. However, if there are, depending on the domain, like I said, red widgets, and you sell widgets, and you get redwidgets.com redirected to widgets.com/red, that's the most appropriate situation. So if you do have any questions about 301 redirects or domain migrations or anything like that, feel free to get in touch with me. So this has been the March 10th, 2022 Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast for March 10th, 2022. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. As again, this is as a reminder, these videos are always posted right after our Thursday podcast on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, the Hartzer Consulting YouTube channel. We are now on Facebook Live, on the Bill Hartzer Facebook Live page every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Central Mountain Time, 2:30 p.m. Central Time, and 12:30 p.m. Pacific Time in the United States. Again, these are all recorded, and if you're seeing a recorded version, you may want to also check out the Facebook Live version that happens every Thursday, like I said, every Thursday afternoon. Thanks for listening this afternoon and watching, and we will see you next week. Thanks.